Well, good afternoon. I think we have a tough act to follow with Mike Milken and David Petraeus.
Yeah,
they're wonderful. Yeah, and David's one of my great heroes. So David spoke about leadership, and for us as entrepreneurs and investors, it's all about leadership. So tell us, what do you think is essential for leadership at Zillow in particular?
Well, part of it is showing up. Great leaders, and I learned this from General Petraeus, they get in there, they roll up their sleeves. But the other keys to leadership that I've learned are setting a clear mission and practicing servant leadership. So I try very hard to make sure that the role of the manager at Zillow Group is to help their direct reports succeed. And so, every one-on-one, for example, starts and ends with, what can I do for you? How can I help you? What problems can I take off your plate? It's very much that the manager works for the direct report and not the other way around. To me, that's how to lead.
All right. And how has your leadership style changed over the last decade? And, you've evolved from being a private, startup, and then kind of not a lot there, and then early stage, and venture, then a growth, and then go public, then you've acquired Trulia, and you're scaling. I mean, it's a different set of challenges.
It is. So, we have 3,000 employees now, and when we started the company 12 years ago, we had just a handful. And so my leadership style has had to change and adapt as the company has grown in size. I'd say the biggest thing that I have changed about my leadership style is realizing that good leadership adapts its communication style to whom it's trying to communicate with.
Right.
In other words, it's not one size fits all. And this is something that we've actually institutionalized at Zillow Group, where every employee at the company takes a personality test, and we call it Insights. And what this does is it tells people how you want to be communicated with. And so, for example, I lead with red energy. And what that means is that be brief, be bright, be gone. That's people that lead with red energy, and I suspect many of you. Be brief, be bright, be gone. That probably resonates with you. If you lead with yellow energy, it means you have a sunny, happy disposition and you want to be involved in things. If you lead with blue energy, it means you're calm, cool, collected, analytical. And there are all these different color schemes.
Is there a brown where you put them all together?
There's. Then you just can't be led at all. But what it does is when I have to communicate something with someone, I'll walk up to them at their desk, and literally at their desk, they'll have these 4 color blocks that will be the result of their test, and it's also on our corporate intranet. So if I'm slacking with them or I'm emailing or texting with them, I see it on the intranet.
The color next.
The color order. And so I change my communication style based on how they want to be communicated with.
Man, there is a robot here, I tell you what. I mean, the cybers are here. That's amazing. You can change your personality to reflect the other side.
And it takes some getting used to, because the sort of traditional view of leadership and management is, it's up to the direct report to adapt their listening style to how their boss.
Yeah.
We never use the word boss. Boss to me is a verb.
Yeah.
Okay. To boss someone around means to tell them what to do. Right. And I don't think that's the role of the manager.
It's not going to work. Yeah. All right. So walk us through the evolution of Zillow. What were the 3 or 4 key inflection points over the last decade or so where you had really challenged your leadership to make the right decisions, which clearly you have, to position yourself to be successful? Look back.
Yeah, we started about 12 years ago with this vision of trying to turn on the lights. That's a phrase we use a lot internally. And what we mean by that is shopping for a home before Zillow was like being in a dark room where only the realtor held the flashlight. And as a consumer, you want to grab the flashlight for yourself, or better yet, turn on the lights in the dark room so you can see everything. And so that's the strategy that comes to turn on the lights. It's not to put the agent out of the business. Actually, the agent is still there with you and playing an important role, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But we want the consumer to be empowered. So we want to remedy information asymmetry. And the first way we did that was by bringing online all this public data. So beds, bath square footage, tax history, sale price history, and the Zestimate. So the first inflection point, the first seminal moment was 10, 12 years ago when we launched with the Zestimate. And it was this oh my God, a price on every.
The Zestimate was there at the launch, or was it?
It was. Yeah. So when we first launched in 2006, we had 40 million Zestimates with a 12% error rate.
So what happened when you turned it on? Because I remember like first heard of Zillow and you got a Zestimate, it was cool.
What happened was we had a million people come to the website.
I'm going to move this podium. We're such a handsome.
A million people came in the first day.
We got to let everyone see us here.
And I think actually.
And modest too. Yeah.
You know,
pull it forward here. Sorry.
We had 1 million people come in the first day. And I think even with all the growth of all these other incredible services from Twitter to Snapchat that have happened since then, I still don't think any service has had 1 million people show up.
1 million people showed up in the first day.
Yes,
I was one of them. I was 10 of them, actually.
And the website crashed.
Yeah.
The website crashed by 4 hours in, and it took almost, I think, 6 or 8 hours for us to get it back online.
Right.
Now, this estimate wasn't that accurate back then. It was a 12% error rate on 40 million homes. Today,
sounds like a bank.
Today, we have estimates on 100 million homes, and our estimate accuracy is closer to 4 or 5%. So much more accurate on the much broader footprint. Now, I'm sure your home, this estimate, I'm sure, is way too low. I see some head nodding in the front row. I got a little needling at lunch from some of my table mates. But the truth is that on kind of a normal home, like an average home in a given community, this estimate is pretty accurate. So that was the first
one, the estimate, okay.
The next one was probably acquiring Trulia, or actually I guess going public. But going public to me is sort of just a way of raising capital and creating permanent capital. So although it was an exciting milestone as an entrepreneur, it wasn't really a seminal moment in the company's life. Acquiring Trulia was. Trulia was our arch rival. It was a public company, a couple $1 billion market cap. It was sort of our brother from another mother. It was, TCV and Benchmark funded Zillow in Seattle, and Excel and Sequoia funded Trulia in San Francisco. We both went public. We were arch rivals, and then we did an all-stock merger. And that was seminal because it gave us the combined scale to create clear category leadership.
Right.
And now it also created a lot of complexity and operational challenges of merging with your arch rival and trying to get everybody to get along. And
it took a year to get the approval process, though. That must have been terrible because you're kind of frozen with your pricing and your operations. You're
10 months.
Rapidly changing industry, and you've got to sort of tread
10
water. And
10 months with the Federal Trade Commission of running to standstill, trying to convince the government to approve the merger, and trying to run the Zillow business and the Trulia team trying to run the Trulia business without knowing whether the deal would get approved. So we couldn't communicate or coordinate. The two teams didn't know, are these friends or foes, or is the deal going to close or not close? And so it was a very challenging time.
You had this evil dark force from Australia named Rupert Murdoch lurking. That's not your words; those are my words.
Okay.
And you.
So News Corp owns one of our rivals.
Yeah. Move. But all right, so you went public, merged, got through, took 10 months, and then you could start to operate, really.
Yes, and what we did, the strategy of acquiring Trulia was to integrate everything that faces the real estate industry. So listing feeds, ad products, data, everything B2B is integrated now under Zillow Group, and everything that faces the consumer remains separate. So there are 200 people that wake up every day in San Francisco trying to make Trulia the most visited real estate site on the web. And there are 300 people in Seattle that wake up every day trying to make Zillow the most visited real estate site on the web. And the ingredients that they're given are the same. Listings, ad units, data. And like two chefs in two competing kitchens, each given the same ingredients, and they're asked to cook up their own recipes and their own food with the same ingredients, they each compete with the same raw data.
You had a lot in common, but some differences in the business model. So you drop the listings. You emphasize what's driving you with Zillow, with the agent. Isn't that true? That's when you could really start to turn up the gas on that.
Yeah, so the way we make money is, we'll do over $1 billion in revenue this year. We make money by selling ads. We're a media company. We're not a brokerage. And what that means is that real estate agents buy local advertising from us on a zip code basis, and rental property managers, people that run apartment buildings, manage apartment buildings, they pay to put their listings on the site. Home builders pay to put their listings on the site. So it's a media company. It's not a real estate brokerage.
All right, so you got through the acquisition, through the approval, closed it, then what?
Scale. So, then let's get big. So we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on product development every year trying to make these sites bigger. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising. And the end result is that about 75-ish% of people looking for real estate information on the web or on a smartphone are using one of our sites.
Right.
So we have about 75% of users using us. And then the next step is the most important piece for any company is to try to reap profits from the hard work that you did. And so we, of course, now are trying to get our ad revenue to grow into that consumer market share.
Right.
So it's great that we have 70-odd% of consumers,
right,
but we have about 5% of agent spend. So agents spend $10 billion advertising on places other than Zillow Group,
like
even
the
though
park bench and the
Yep.
flyers and all that
buses
stuff.
and grocery store shopping carts and refrigerator magnets and newspaper advertising, direct mail, all sorts of crazy stuff.
There's a $10 billion, just that TAM alone.
Yes, and it's our belief that eventually that will move online, and eventually that spend will move to the sites that have the most consumer audience.
Right.
And we're in the early stages of seeing that play out.
So it sounds like when you've got a $10 billion TAM and you get 20, 30, 40% of that, as a normal market leadership in an online world. That's a good sized company in addition to your other businesses, but isn't it, so how do you balance being long-term focused with the short-term marketplace? You've
Right.
structured this Class A, Class C structure. Has that allowed you to provide you that ability to play long ball where some other people are maybe more short-term focused?
It does. So let me explain. We have two classes of stock. We have Z and ZG. You can buy a share of voting. You can buy a share of non-voting stock. They trade basically almost exactly the same. So it's not Snapchat where they only issued IPO'd non-voting shares. You can buy a voting share or a non-voting share. The reason that we did that is so that we can be long-term oriented.
Yeah.
We make decisions every day. And I'll give you a couple examples, if you're interested, that have the effect of hurting near-term profitability, but we hope and think and predict that they will pay off down the road. And having that dual-class stock structure allows us to make those types of decisions without being subject to the whims of short-term capital markets, which can be very
So you get the best
distracting.
of both worlds. You benefit of being public, so you could buy Trulia, but the
Yes.
benefit of having a long-term focus.
Yes,
So you've
yes.
you've opted.
And we followed Google and Facebook and others in doing that.
So, talked a little bit a minute ago about the investment in product, and you've also spoken in the past about the importance of staying close to the product. How does that manifest in kind of your leadership role and that of your senior managers?
Well, the way we do product development is the secret ingredient to our company. I mean, if you think about if we were it is the thing that matters most. So more than our advertising, more than our business strategy, it's the product. And the way that we create product is by having really small teams. We follow the Amazon 2-pizza rule here, where every product team can be fed by 2 pizzas or fewer. So, for
Sometimes you
example,
have one engineer eat a whole pizza.
so,
Sorry.
so for example, the team that works on the map, on Zillow on the desktop is 15 people, and they feel totally empowered. The product team lead that runs that team is essentially the CEO of a little startup. And they manage their own product development queue. They have their own code branch. They have their own ship cycle. They decide what to work on. And so there are 30 or 40 confederations of these really small companies that together make the whole product. The reason we keep it so decentralized is because that makes people autonomous, that makes them more engaged, and we think that makes for better work products. There are some disadvantages, though. It's very hard to do big things that require coordination across each of these semi-autonomous units. And so that's the give and take of this type of product development structure.
Product development, Seattle, where
San
else?
Francisco, Irvine. So we have about 1,000 employees in Seattle, about 500 in San Francisco, about 500 in Irvine, about 300 in New York, a couple hundred in Cincinnati, Lincoln, Nebraska, Vancouver, British Columbia, and Atlanta. So through 13 acquisitions, we've ended up with a very distributed workforce, 2,000 people outside of headquarters and 1,000 people inside headquarters.
All right, Cincinnati, you bought a really interesting company there. Talk about
We did.
Yeah.
It was one of our larger acquisitions. We bought a company called Dot Loop in Cincinnati. And this is the leader in transaction management for real estate. So if you've bought a home recently or signed an apartment lease, there's a decent chance that you use .loop for electronic signature, for all the back and forth paperwork between you and your agent and your inspector and your lender and the seller's agent. All of that happens inside of .loop. And we bought it, and we're investing very heavily in it because we believe that the future of all real estate transactions is going to be paperless. And more of that will live inside the Zillow and truly a consumer experience. So, it's a perfect example actually about the dual class stock structure.
Yeah.
.loop loses money.
Yeah.
It's a couple hundred employees, and we're plowing in a lot of resources to gain market share and get more and more brokerages, agents, and MLSs and consumers to use .loop. And it has the effect of hurting 2017 margin and hurting 2017 profitability, but we think down the road it will pay off in spades.
You think about how antiquated the whole process of buying a house is. I mean, just to be able to, having to sign documents and,
No, I mean
everything.
It still is for a lot of people. There's, on the hood of a car, buying a house, like signing 100 pages over and over. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And so all of that, just like the advertising budgets, all of that transaction management will move online.
All right. So sometimes, I'll send you a note. And I get this very nice reply that you're off the grid. Which makes me jealous more than anything. But I think that's indicative of a culture you have at Zillow. So tell us about, how the culture and how does he describe it, and how does it impact innovation?
It matters a lot. I mean, this is probably the thing that I pay the closest attention to is people and culture. So the culture is mission oriented. We start all company meetings by reciting the mission in unison. It's a little creepy, but effective. And our mission is to build the world's largest and most vibrant home-related marketplace in the world. Or, sorry, strike worlds at the beginning and move to the end. Anyway, largest and most
World's
vibrant.
Too small. We want intergalactic.
In the universe, yeah. Largest and most vibrant home-related marketplace. So it starts with understanding the mission. It starts with having 6 core values that everybody knows and understands, and screening for that on the way in, and doing performance management based on those core values. And the way we run the company is as a consensus-driven meritocracy.
Okay.
So what that means is the best idea wins, people debate, people use data, and there's really very little sense of hierarchy in terms of decision making.
Right.
I personally very rarely make decisions. I actually try to create an environment where I view my job as to recruit, retain, and motivate great people and create an environment where they can do their best work.
Right.
And as a result of that, decision making is pretty decentralized. It's pushed out away from me as far out as possible.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of going off the grid, that's something that I lead by example here, and I don't check email, or I almost never check email on Saturdays during the day. I do an electronic Sabbath, where from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, I just go offline.
Terrific.
And then when I go on vacation, I also go offline, and people know that, and they do the same, and it's very helpful to recharge that way.
All right, so mission statement, again, for everyone.
Build the world's largest and most vibrant home-related marketplace.
Okay, so that's an ambitious vision. So how big can Zillow be then? I mean, and no forward projections in the market, but I mean, because it's a $10 billion TAM, and we grew up all with newspapers, and that was the golden profits of newspaper. Buffett and Munger, when I talk to them, they talk about those were the great old days. That was incredibly profitable, those real estate ads. Now, that's one part of your business, but how big is the overall?
Well, I mean, the consumer usage is already very large. It's still growing 10 to 20% year over year in terms of consumer traffic. But at some point, we will reach some saturation in terms of consumer usage in the US. Now, having multiple brands helps because, for example, Trulia's brand awareness is much lower than Zillow's, and HotPad's brand awareness as our rentals brand is much lower than Zillow's. So we have a lot more traffic growth and consumer growth.
Yeah.
On the revenue side, I mean, the reason I show up for work every day is because I still think it's really early.
Yeah.
I still think that we have about $1 billion of revenue this year, and relative to the size of the market, that's pretty small. I mean, our biggest business is agent advertising, as I said. We have about 5% wallet share there. Our second biggest business is mortgage advertising, and we have an infinitesimal amount of market share in terms of mortgage lenders buying access to home borrowers. Our rentals business is also relatively small compared with the potential. So it's still, it's still very early.
Okay. So Talk about the dynamics here. There's about 500,000 realtors in the U.S., or somewhere in that range, and the average age of the realtors my age, and the home buyer's younger than you, right? So
yes.
There's a disconnect. Well, no, maybe 20 years difference. And with this changing of both the internationalization of home buying in the U.S. with the immigrant population and the younger buyers, the millennials, how is the real estate market changing? Is that accelerating your opportunity? And what's going to look like in 5 or 10 years? Because we're all used to buying homes on the hood of the car with 100 pages we got to sign. It's horrible, but the young person's used to Uber and
kind of on-demand sort of
Amazon.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that's changing is who is a successful real estate agent.
Right.
So when I was a kid, growing up, my mom was a part-time real estate agent. She'd do a couple deals a year, kind of friends and family, people in our community. Those hobbyists are getting crushed by the internet. They just can't compete. They're getting killed by full-time, savvy, tech-oriented online marketers that use CRM and mobile tools to gain consumer awareness. They are active on social media. And so those professionals are killing it. They're killing the hobbyists. So that's a big change. Now
is that 10% of the agents, 20% of the agents? Or?
It's really hard to know because all this is so fragmented, but I would venture to guess that at least half of the transactions a couple years ago were done by hobbyists.
Right.
And there's just no way in 5 years that will be as big as it is. It's already declining rapidly. And the reason for that is consumer expectation, right?
Yeah.
So think about your expectation of everything because of instantaneous access to everything because of the web. So you can ask Google or Alexa or Siri any question under the sun and get an answer in seconds, right? You can press a button and summon a car. You can press a button and buy or sell a stock. Everything is instant now. And so when we bought homes 20 years ago, you used to be willing to leave a message on the answering machine for your real estate agent, and you get an answer 2 days later. Well, now it requires on-demand access to everything, and the hobbyists can't compete.
Yeah.
People who compete are the ones that are using software tools and have teams and lead routing and are 24/7 service, and so they're the ones that are killing it. This is a good trend for us because those professionals are, of course, buying advertising to build their business at the expense of the hobbyists. So that's the biggest change. Second biggest change is consumer empowerment. I mean, you hear it every day from real estate agents, sometimes begrudgingly, that their client is like Zillow says, or I saw on Trulia X or Y, and that can be a pain in the neck for the real estate agent sometimes. But the good ones are very good at turning that conversation to their advantage. So I equate this a bit to medicine. My wife's a doctor, and she's a pediatrician, and patients and their parents will walk into her clinic and they immediately start Googling whatever my wife says. My wife will be like, "Oh, I think your kid has, scleroderma, and she needs this drug." And mom is like Googling it, and she'll be like, "Dr. Rascoff, the side effects of that drug are whatever." And my wife's like, "Yes, I know. Let me explain to you why this is nonetheless the right medication." And so doctors have gotten good at talking about the internet with their patients, and good real estate agents have gotten good at explaining things to their clients. Agents aren't going away, though.
No.
And in my opinion, it's an infrequent, expensive, emotional, complex transaction.
Yeah.
And so it begs for an intermediary. I get a lot of pushback on that from people in academia or in financial services and others.
It's going to be a much higher value add. All right. So you just came from interviewing David Petraeus for your podcast.
I did.
Yeah. Tell us about your podcast, kind of why you do it, what's been, what do you talk to David about? What's some of the biggest insights, best moments?
So I do a podcast. It's called Office Hours. It's on iTunes and Spotify and also on our website. And what I do is I interview other leaders. And I do it totally selfishly, or I started it selfishly because I wanted to learn from all these other people. So the CEO of Twitter and the CEO of Citigroup and Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker. I mean,
President Obama.
Anyone interesting I can get access to somehow, I interview. And so I very cleverly leveraged today's event to get a microphone in front of General Petraeus.
I thought that's how I got you here. But.
There's a little bit of a negotiation, Jamie.
Okay.
So I wrote down a couple things that we just recorded it. We'll release it in a couple weeks. But he talked about the importance of mission. Obviously, in the military, it's even more important than it is in business. I was surprised he brought up the importance of changing your communication style based on whom you're talking to. Never having served in the military, I always assume that in the military it's very command and control, and you just tell someone what to do and they just go do it, right? I mean, that's what you see in the movies.
Yeah.
And he told a very different story of leadership in the military, of how he has to kind of coax and cajole and convince people, even his direct reports, and he would change his management style based on what he thought was the most effective way to communicate with that individual. So that was eye-opening for me. And then the last piece was the importance of disruption. Again, not something you'd expect a general to talk about.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how just never being satisfied with the status quo, always trying to formalize change inside the organization.
Right.
It's not enough to just say, hey, we're an innovative company and we encourage people to be disruptive. Actually formalizing it in some strategy construct internally to make sure that you're constantly asking yourself, how can I bring us down to build it up? Perfect example for us is the commission question. Right? We've built our business on this supposition that agents will always exist and will always earn a lot of commissions, and therefore we'll sell a lot of ads to them. But we have to always constantly be challenging that assumption and asking ourselves, what if that's not? What if we're wrong?
Right.
And the example he used, the classic example from the web, is Netflix disrupting its DVD rental business by moving into streaming, and then disrupting its streaming business by moving into original content. And here's a great company with a huge cash cow of DVD rental that was willing to kill that cash cow to build up a bigger business in streaming. And so anyway, to hear a general pull out these examples and talk about applications in both military and the private sector, it was fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. He's exceptional, but so are you. Spencer, thank you for joining us today and sharing your time and these insights.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right. Thank you very much. All right.